What's up guys, Smash here. So today I thought I would have a kind of like a quick little video about some of my thoughts on the design philosophy of this game, like the direction I'm trying to take it. Um, and yeah, just to give you some of my thoughts on that really. So if I quickly go to the collection, I've added a new card recently, and he's called Mr Swampy. And you can see that he's a 1 mana 0/3 with Provoke and Ranged. Now this card in actual Duelist is called Swamp Entangler, who also is a 1 mana 0/3 with Provoke, but he doesn't have a range in normal Duelist. So I thought in this video I'd kind of address why I've given this little guy ranged. And there's a few reasons. For one, I thought calling him Mr. Swampy and having a 0 mana ranged minion was kind of funny, so I did it partly because I have a crappy sense of humor, I suppose. Another reason that I did it was because really and this is the main reason I did it, is basically that I kind of wanted to remind people that this game is never going to be identical to Duelist, right? There's a number of reasons why this game is never going to be identical to Duelist, and one of them just boils down to the fact that it would be really, really hard to recreate Duelist exactly as it used to be. And you know, we have design limitations, we don't have an infinite amount of time, so we have to make practical decisions about what we want to do and the direction we want to go. So a good example of that is something like Piercing Mantis, right? If you read the card text, after attacking, deal 2 damage to all surrounding enemy minion, deal 2 damage to all surrounding enemies. This card is, you know, this card text is not the same as Frenzy, right? In Duelist, this is a 2/2 with Frenzy. This card text is similar to Frenzy, but it's not identical to Frenzy. And the reason it's not identical to the Duelist card is basically because when I was designing Piercing Mantis, it was really difficult. In fact, I would argue it's currently impossible, given the current card engine that we have in this game, to actually recreate Frenzy exactly as it is in Duelist. So when designing this card, I kind of had two options really. One is just not add it to the game because it doesn't work exactly like it works in Duelist. Or two, I could add it to the game and then try and make it a somewhat faithful recreation that's close to the original but not quite the same. Celestial Phantom again has, you know, it works similarly to Duelist, but again, not exactly the same. So this card, for example, only works when you attack with it, whereas obviously in Duelist it was whenever you dealt damage with the card. Now I can't, you know, we don't have the power, the game engine that we currently have is not powerful enough to do an effect like that. So instead, you know, I kind of tried to create the card in a way that I could. And it's similar, but it's not the same, right? It's a little bit different. By the way, the reason it's using this sprite instead of the Celestial Phantom sprite is because the sprite that this card should use is bugged. That's the only reason. Instead of fixing the bug, I just added a different sprite. But Mr. Swampy is kind of the first time I've actually departed from the way a card works in Duelist from a card, how it's going to work in our game, you know, because I can actually create Mr. Swamp Entangler exactly as it is in Duelist, right? With these two other cards, it was a mechanical limitation that I couldn't properly recreate the card. With Swamp Entangler, I could have properly recreated the card, and I chose to make it a little bit different. And yeah, the reason the two reasons I've kind of done that really is as I say, one, it's kind of like a philosophical reminder to people that this game is not going to be identical to Duelist, right? It's just kind of in the game, and it is a reminder that although we're trying to recreate Duelist, it is going to be a bit different. You know, in the future there will be balance patches. In the future there will be potentially our own expansions and so on. Eventually this game is going to take a life of its own, and you know, maybe 7, 8, 9 months down the line it won't look like the original Duelist at all. But hopefully we'll make a better game than what Duelist used to be. And yeah, the second reason that I gave this guy ranged is because if you think about it, Swamp Entangler in original Duelist was just never played, right? It was never a constructed viable card. I don't think it was. It probably wasn't picked very often. I would imagine in Gauntlet either. It was just a generally useless card that never did anything, right? And I personally want to move away from that sort of design, really. I don't want to spend time and waste good art on cards that are just so terrible that they have absolutely no use case, you know? So I thought I'd kind of give this card a small buff, right? It's not an amazingly strong buff, giving this thing range when it has 0 attack. But, maybe this card could in some way see some niche play, right? Because you could always imagine that if we add cards like, I don't know, um, add a card like Greater Fortitude or something, suddenly this becomes a 2/5 with ranged, for 2 mana. Like, that sounds pretty legit. Of course, it costs you 2 cards, but maybe that's worth it. So we've taken a card that was just traditionally bad in Duelist that saw absolutely no play whatsoever, and we've kind of given him a little bit more, a few more things to do, really. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there. Is that I basically, changed the Swamp Entangler to be like this, just to add our own stamp to the game, and yeah, just buffing bad cards as well, really. So yeah, that's all I had to really say. Predominantly, I'm just going to repeat myself if I keep on going, so I'll end the video there. All right, guys, take care and have fun.